Welcome, everybody. You're on Mind Your Biz. And we got Ralph, the money guy, here from Gauntlet Funding. And, of course, we got the VIP team, Lisa and Therese, right here. And we just want to talk about different money products because everybody wants to get into the real estate game. But if they don't know how to even go to step one, and it's not always about having a lot of money, it's about the strategies you take, right?
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of products out there where you don't need tons of money. Maybe you have great credit and you can lean on your great credit. Maybe you have some equity in something you own already. Maybe you can pull some money together with friends or family. There's a lot of different ways that the regular guy and regular girl can get in this real estate game. So we're going to pick Ralph's brain because he got duffel bags of money with him. And he's going to tell us how we can get a piece of his money, right? So we can be investors and we can grow financially just like the big whales out there that are just caking up and, the rich gets richer. But now it's time for the little guys to get in the game or we'll never, no one's going to ever grow here, right?
Exactly.
Yes, and it's another avenue.
Yes.
Correct. And these are kind of the secrets that really the rich people, they don't want you to know. They don't want us, they don't want the people with the humble salaries get in the game and competing, right? So we want to give everybody a chance. So this is where we can get familiar with some real money products that are out there. So Ralph, generally speaking, everybody knows about the traditional loans for getting a residential home.
Correct.
You go
your primary residence. Yeah.
Primary residence. You got to put 5% down on average.
Minimal 3.5.
Minimum 3.5.
Yeah.
So if you get a house for a few $100,000, you're gonna have to put $5,000 down. You're gonna have to put another $10,000 for closing.
You know what's interesting? I work with investors. I work with all day long, and some of their stories, when you speak to them, how they got started, it's fantastic. So one of the most fascinating stories that I ever heard is I know somebody that lived at home with his parents. He bought his first 3 investment properties while he lived at home. Now think about that for a minute, right? We're so caught up into this. I want to get into large space. I want to get into space. A lot of the initial investors, it's where you're putting your money. Many times the primary residence, when you buy it, is not your best investment. If you got a family and a wife and the kids, don't be mad at me, okay? Because that's where they want to go. But sometimes that's not the right first move.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Listen to that. So that's a big point, and you heard it from a guy that makes money off of lending money, and he's telling you that may not be the right way to go, the way that almost everybody is programmed to buy a house. Because today, a house may not be necessarily an investment. It's kind of an expense.
It is an expense.
And after 30 years, if you bought a $500,000 house and you got this $450,000 loan, in 30 years you're going to pay almost $1 million for that house that you paid $500,000 30 years ago.
I know.
So really, are you making money? No. You may be breaking even. Where's the real money to be made?
There's tax-free equity appreciation. Okay, there are benefits to home ownership as opposed to paying rent. Okay, that's for sure.
Yes.
But when you really evaluate, it's still an alligator. You're still feeding it every month.
Yeah.
It's not feeding you.
Right.
Not to mention the problems and the money pits that bring on in your household.
Right.
Roofs leaking. It's expensive.
Yes.
So just to counter that, and it's not a count, it's more elaboration, I tell first-time buyers, look for something that's multifamily.
Yes.
2-family. You're not going to necessarily pay double for that home. So maybe that $500,000 single-family house, you're not going to pay $1 million for the double for the like a 2-family. You might spend $750, and then in the scale of your loan increasing, it may not be that much more. It could be another $1,000, $1,500 a month,
Right.
and that place.
But you could rent it out.
This is
and
probably
pay
my
more
loan
money.
guy, my other guy.
The nerve.
Yeah.
I get jealous.
You could definitely rent it out, make more
Right.
money that pays for itself.
Correct. So in theory, you could get a 2-family. Your mortgage might be $1,500 more a month, but maybe you rent it out for $2,000. Now you got an extra $500 that could subsidize your portion of the mortgage.
In addition to that, one of the things, any good let's call him mortgage banker that you're speaking to, should always be able to forecast a couple of years down the road of what you want to accomplish. So if I ever speak to a client, I ask him what he wants to accomplish. Then I kind of structure his deals for him. So if you are going to buy a 2-family home for you to be your primary residence, I'm going to show you how to properly file a tax return the forthcoming year or two. And when you're ready to buy another property, you can vacate that unit and move on to another. The only way you're going to amass wealth is by winning a lottery, and I don't have the winning tickets. Okay, I wish I did. Or you have to own real estate.
Yeah. Real estate people, we're not talking about invisible crypto right now. We're not talking about stocks that just tanked.
Little
Are you guys paying attention? The stocks just tanked?
Yes.
All right, and inflation is going up more than all of your 401ks or any kind of conservative bonds. So you got to do something. And real estate is really the only solid way to appreciate and grow your money. 100%.
Forever.
100%. So we talked about a single family home. You can go to your big banks. You can wait 3 months and hope to get approved. And you might end up with a money pit, right? So now let's talk about an investment home, something where maybe we want to flip it. Maybe we want to rent it out. So how does that change in the loan process compared to going for your traditional primary residence loan?
That's actually a great question. The biggest challenge, the biggest turnoff, I guess, to some people are when they ask their local mortgage professional, investment properties require 25% down when you're going through traditional means. Okay, so here's the problem to that. Most people, when they want to buy their first asset, don't have that. Now, you can raise it through other means. There are different discussions we could have about partners, partnerships, certain entities that you can kind of form. But what's beginning to happen is it turns them off, and they wind up buying the primary residence where you could put down much less down. Okay? If you're in that boat, that's a good strategy. Just make sure you have one. I think the biggest problem is no one has a strategy. They just do. Plan a strategy, spread something for the next 3 years, what you want to accomplish. And the first step is not nearly as difficult once you know where the next one is going to follow. Now, there are ways you can get into that first property for less. Okay? Some of those, we may not cover them today because you have to be a little creative on knowing the sellers or buying a property distressed. All right, so we can dig further into that distressed assets and what they mean and how to find them and why you'll find things less expensive than you would find something at the peak of the market.
All right, so tell us a scenario, all right? Now I'm going to give a scenario that may not make sense if you're in New York or California, the homes are just sky high, properties are just way overpriced, but whatever. Let's just make a scenario, a $500,000 property. Let's say it's an investment property, not the primary residence. So in theory, you got to put about 25% down. That's $125,000. All right. So now how do they go about getting this type of loan, and what are some of the strategies to getting some of that money back, or being able to fix it and flip it, or fix it and rent it? So give us some of the strategy in trying to acquire a loan, and where's the light at the end of that tunnel of laying out $125,000, which could be a life savings,
Sure
could be a
can
401k.
Okay, so there's a term, if you ever want to become an investor, you should learn it. It's called subsidized equity. What the hell does that mean? It means when you buy something properly, that's when you make your money. It's not when you sell it. Okay, you got to buy it right.
You buy it right.
Absolutely. When you buy it right, you'll have this feature called subsidized equity. And what that really means is that's the difference in what you're purchasing the property for to what it can be worth. Okay? There's your key. If you're buying properties at the top of the market, well, no, you don't have that advantage. And you'll come to realize if you speak to any good money manager, anybody that understands how to lend private money, they're going to say you're buying too high. You're not buying it right. What does that mean, I'm buying it right? It's a property. It needs work. It needs renovation. If you're not buying it right, it means you're buying it too high. So the only advantage you get is by locating assets that need work. There's where you can unlock value. Putting in $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 worth of work could raise value $150,000, $200,000. There's the trick. There's the trade-off. Your sweat that you put into it in getting the property to be renovated equates to found equity.
All right, so to interpret that in simple form is if you're buying this house that needs work at 500 grand, and you know after it's fixed, it could be worth 750,000, but you only need 100 grand to fix it. So now you spend 500 grand in theory, could be with your loan, and you need another 100 to fix it. That's 600 grand technically. You invested in the property, but it's already worth 750. So that would be the equity, the difference between the total value after fixing it, which could be 750,000, and the money that you got to buy the house or the property, and the money you took to fix. So in this case, we said 100 grand plus 500 is 600. So 750,000 minus the 600 is your equity. I know, this is layman's terms, but some people forget this.
So you gained 150 in your pocket.
150 in the pocket if you sold it right after fixing it up. And that's what he means by buying right. You don't want to buy something that's for 500,000, cost 100,000 to fix. Now you're at 600, and you can sell it only for about 625.
Right.
Now, 25,000 equity.
Not worth it.
What is that?
Not worth it.
So that's when you're just buying too high. So that's why Ralph is saying look for something that needs work, and you don't have to put out a ton of money to fix it. And after you fix it, it's worth a lot more than what you put in. And that's the key, is equity.
I did that for my condo.
So there are a lot of products that can help you even finance the repairs of those properties into the mortgage if you buy it right. You're
Okay.
going to hear me keep saying that over and over again about finding properties with equity.
So we're talking about this house for 500,000.
Right.
We know for roughly 100, we can get it fixed to make it worth 750.
Right.
So now tell us how they go about now trying to get that extra 100 grand when they sweated to come up with the first 125,000.
So you put down your, let's just call it 20% down based on your price you're buying it for. Now, at that point, you're going to create what's called a scope of work. I mean, it's pretty common. Anyone in contracting knows what it is. If you ever had a kitchen done or a bathroom, somebody comes in and they give you an estimate. Well, it's the same exact thing. A contractor, somebody qualified to do the work, would give you an estimate. That estimate would detail the work that needs to be done to the house. If that's done properly and the after repair value is $750, I could actually take that $100,000, set the money aside in a kind of a reserve, a construction budget, and that money, as you start fixing the property, you can release and draw down on it. So you literally can finance the repairs into the price that you're purchasing it for.
So wait a second. I got this house that needs work. I buy it.
Right.
Do I have to buy it for the 500 and also make sure there's another 100 built into this purchase for the construction, or that comes after the purchase of the house?
That gets at closing, that money will be there. As
All right.
long as
So it's two products technically. One is to buy the initial property for 500, and one is for another 100,000
Finance.
to fix it.
it's one loan,
One loan.
it's one loan. Okay, the construction portion of it, it would act as like a line of credit. And the line of credit would
Attached to that.
Yeah, it's attached to the equity of it. What happens on that loan is you can't draw it down unless we approve it. How do we approve it? We inspect the work that was done. When a certain portion of work would be done, we release that portion back to you.
Okay. And now, what if the work that needs to be done is less?
So,
You try to get an estimate before closing, I guess.
well, what happens is when we value these properties, right? We're going to value this property based on the scope of work that you're presenting. Now, all valuations are based on comparables in the area that are like and identical to this property. So once we establish the value that's worth $750 once you fix it, at that point, that $100,000 that you set aside for the cost of the construction is part of your loan, but it's the part you don't pay interest on until you begin drawing it down. So there's actually two components to it. It's one loan, but two components. There's the acquisition part of it, and part of your acquisition, to make the deal work, there's a construction component.
Right.
Now, is this kind of a product? Because to me, this is like a two things in one. One is to buy the house, one is to fix the house.
Right.
Now, are traditional banks giving you this product? Is it easy to get this from a big Chase, a TD Bank?
Near impossible.
Near impossible.
Near
Now,
impossible.
so that's why most people don't know about
Correct.
this.
Yeah.
So listen up. This is a little secret that your big banks aren't telling you, the ones that you've been putting your money into your whole life. You got your debit card, you see the commercials, everyone's brainwashed to thinking you have to go to them and they're the only source, but there's other sources out there. Ralph is just one, and he's giving you, this is the secret sauce. You can actually buy a property, get the loan for the property, and get the loan to fix it. So you're not sweating, or you're not moving into a house that's all crappy, and then waiting 10 years to fix it. As you get your tax return, your tax refunds, you got to bust your ass in a third job. This is a way we could do it all up front. Now, how does that change the game? Are they paying tons? Is it more interest for this? Is there, give us, the advantage of doing this?
Well, the advantage is the following. It's the ease. And remember, we got to remember, everything in this life is give to get. Okay, we have to remember that. So there's no one going to offer you a loan with prevailing interest rates where you have to do nothing to get it. It doesn't work that way. So these loans, we don't look at personal income. So you could say, I'm self-employed, I don't show a lot of income. Don't care. We don't care about your personal income because these loans are short-term in nature and because they're equity-driven. You're going to keep hearing me use that word over and over again to get used to it. They're equity-driven. We really care about the equity in the property. We care that if you can accomplish purchasing it, fixing it, it will be worth this value. And at that point, no one walks away from having 25% found equity in a property. So what do they do with it? Now your options are you can sell it, capture that money, or you can refinance it, recapture as much of the initial investment as you put in, rinse, wash, and repeat.
So ultimately, we can't be afraid to go down a road where we might be paying more interest, because the fact is, you may never be able to get that $100,000 to fix this $500,000 piece of crap, right? So you're going to buy this piece of crap for $500,000. If you can't afford to fix it, you're living in this piece of crap that's not worth $750,000. It's still worth $500,000. So it might be worth paying more for that loan, right? More than what you're hearing, you're hearing your 5.5s or whatever you're hearing out lately, 4.9s, 4.5s, whatever. It might be 7. Who the hell knows? Might be 8. But even if it's 10, who cares? Because you'd never get that money, and you'd never get that house to be worth $750,000, and then you can't flip it and make $150,000. So you can't always look at the interest rate. You got to look at your end result. Right? How much money did you need to borrow it? How much money are you going to make when you sell it or when you rent it? So never look at the interest rate because it's all relative, right? You got to look at the end result. What money you're paying now, what money you're going to get at the end of the rainbow.
If it's done strategically and actually and on time, you could actually purchase, repair, and refinance within probably 6 to 8 months. So what you have to realize is the short-term nature of these loans, the rate is almost optical. Yeah, it's real, and you do pay that amount. But what happens is you only paid for 6 months or 7 months of it. And if you do it right, you're out of it. Then you can go to a bank traditional loan, and you can get your whatever prevailing raise out there in the market.
Exactly. So the interest rates, basically you paid, it pays for itself, and then you'll have all that money in your pocket in order to get the house that you want with like a 5% interest rate.
So there's a lot of negative paradigms about all sorts of different features in this market. Do I need so much money to put down? Do I have to file so much in taxes? All of these questions can be answered because they all have relevance. But you can't believe because a friend of yours told you something that's just fact. Because there's so many negative paradigms out there. You really need to seek the true professionals in the industry and that can explain to you how to accomplish these things.
Especially in this market.
But the reality is you're not getting in the game of investing without being able to at least put 20% down. That's the reality, correct?
Unless you now, that's actually a good question. I have met some investors, okay? What they did is they began their career wholesaling. They didn't have 20% down. So what did they do? They went out, they found assets that were worth buying. Remember something. If you have something of value, all you have to do is find somebody who has money, and then you'll have money too. So what happens is the following. If you find something of value, you find, let's say, a property, a distressed property, but you can't buy it, you do not have the money for it, but you know it's of value, you can wholesale to somebody who does have money, or you could do a partnership with someone who has money, and then you start accumulating your own, let's say, wealth. At that point, you can begin doing these on your own. So there are opportunities if you have the motivation to do it.
And he's 100% right. If you don't have the money, you find people with money. You could do all the hard work. The grunt work is digging and looking at properties and doing all the legwork, but that has a value, right? So you may not have the 100 grand to put down. You might not have any money to put down. But if you network and you know people that invest in properties, put them in your phone, save them for that day that you stumble on a property. It could be a family, a friend, whatever, on your block. You see there's an opportunity. There's a lot of fair business people out there and investors that would say, you know what, this is a great deal, and I'm going to give you 5%. So that could be 5% of something you never had. And that's where you start. If you're starting at zero, never be afraid to find someone that has more experience, more money. Get to know your network. See who you can trust. See who's talking crap and who's really doing it, right? And then make yourself of value. So that's what he said. That's why people sometimes, they pull their money together. Now you don't need 20%. Maybe you just need 10%.
Right.
And you find her who's got the other 10%. And we go in together. So you got to get your network out there, people. It's not, if you're alone, you don't have a lot of money, then you need to find people with money, and you got to figure out how to make yourself of value, period.
That's exactly right.
Now, and also another thing is that we're talking about a number 500,000, putting 20% down, 100,000. Maybe you can't look for that $500,000 property. Maybe you got to go one state over. Maybe you got to go 3 hours away from where you live. And that's honestly how I started. I wasn't able to afford, the $500,000 to $800,000 homes right away. So I went an hour and a half away to Connecticut. I found a house that was one of my first houses. It was like 90 grand, and I had to put down, I don't know, I think 20 grand, something like that. Now I didn't have the 20 grand. I had 10,000. I found a family member that was willing to give me the other 10. Now I made them a partner, and that's how I started. You got to start somewhere. So don't be afraid to drive an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours. If you can't afford what's in your, there it is.
Area.
So when we started lending, our first area we began was lending in New York. That's where we're from. And we began to see there were so many opportunities outside of our own area. It opened our eyes to the other opportunities, whether in Jersey, Connecticut, or up and down the eastern seaboard, right? You'd be amazed at how many investors leave their little comfort zone in their home or their neighborhood and buy and attain assets in different locations. You're exactly right.
Yeah,
Full time.
don't be afraid to go out of your comfort zone, literally, because there's deals, and they're not that far. Could be an hour, could be 3 hours. In the grand scheme of things, that's nothing. For you to start building your wealth, what is it to drive a couple of hours?
I would recommend, if you really want to get started, there is a tremendous amount of seminars that are being offered. They're everywhere. They're all over the country where, you'll meet, whether they're bird dogs people who find properties, or you want to become a bird dog, you want to learn how to wholesale. If you really are committed, then there really is no other option. You'll find a way. And the information and the outlets are there. And you will find people that have money. You will find people that can find properties. You will find brokers. You will find all the means necessary to make deals happen.
Now, there's some myths. I see these TV commercials, $1 down, you can own a home. I mean, let's be real. Does that really exist? And if it does, what are the caveats? What's the real,
So I'm going to delever that. I'm going to speak like a real banker for the moment. I'm going to answer that in a banker way. Why would a bank lend you money if you put $1 into it? They wouldn't.
Nah.
So you have to automatically think about it, saying, well, bank wouldn't do that, because they wouldn't. So how could you do that? The only way you can do that is by leveraging other people's money. If you have partners that want to put money in, yes, you could buy it with one of your own dollars, and you found the asset, they're putting in the money, and you're executing the transaction. Yes, you could find money if you found the property. Let's say, again, this is not for beginners, but let's say you found the property that was, with a tremendous amount of equity in it. you may be able to get into that property with less than 20% down or less money because you have so much equity in it, okay? That's another trick. So there are tricks, but no bank's going to lend you money you put an actual $1 up.
Right.
That won't happen.
You got no blood, sweat, and tears into that. Who's gonna put money into where you just put out $1? So it's ridiculous. They're not giving you all the information, obviously. And if you see a seminar that says learn how to buy a house with $1, run. Because you're not gonna be able to buy a house for $1. It's just not. I mean, a million things would have to line up for that to happen. And you're not, we're not hoping for a million things. We want to give you real strategies. So you gave us some strategy on how to buy an investment property. Now, what are some out of the ordinary, some cool products or cool ways or different ways, unorthodox ways to get money that the average person doesn't know about? I mean, I've been here, you got hard money.
Sure.
Let's talk about hard money, all right? It sounds intimidating, it's hard. So why is it so hard, Ralph?
So what's actually funny, there's a history to hard money, okay? For those of you guys in the real estate business, you're going to laugh at this when I explain it. So there used to be several years ago, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but let's say in the 90s or the 80s and the 70s even, you knew a local, let's say attorney or entrepreneur that had money, and you get to know him, you shook his hand, you presented a deal, he liked you, he funded it. Pretty simple. You paid absorbent interest rates because, well, there's a golden rule in finance, and that is he who has the gold makes the rules, okay? So he had the gold, he made the rules. Pretty simple, right? Now, the industry's changed since then. Wall Street, right? Evil Wall Street, which no one likes, which we happen to like. They got involved. They saw the yield, and they saw the opportunities there. They go, you know what? It's a fairly safe investment. We're lending at these certain thresholds. I think we can actually back this. So over the last 10, 12 years, you've been seeing a lot more popularity in the hard money space. Now, we don't call it hard money within this space. We call it bridge financing, right? And the reason why we call it bridge financing is because it really does enable you to get to your next transaction.
Oh, that's so nice and positive.
Isn't that nice?
It's a bridge.
It's a bridge.
It's not hard money.
Not hard.
It's a bridge.
Yes,
bridge.
sounds so sweet and lovely. I want to go across London Bridge.
You want to...
You get to cross the bridge without a riddle.
Well, that's
Right.
the point. Don't you want to cross a bridge together, right?
That's
So
right.
we're trying to get away from
Nicely.
those hard money stigma. We want to go to the bridge financing.
With no trolls.
But at the end of the day, it's really the same thing, okay? I want to give you a little lesson on the hard money industry, a little history about it. But really, the truth is, listen, it is more expensive than regular traditional banking. Okay, let's put that on the table. You want to walk in there with at least the exact expectations you should have. But here's the thing. It's expensive compared to what? How expensive is it compared to opportunities that you can't take because you can't get financing? How much money do you lose? You see, we need to begin to realize and magnify the hurt a little bit, all right? When you can't do something because you can't get financing for it, what's the percentage of loss? It's tremendous.
You gain nothing, you lose nothing, you made nothing.
Right.
It's zero. You got a big
Zero.
golden egg of zero.
And if you take that zero approach over 5 years, you still have zero.
Yeah.
So when I evaluate it, it's not about being expensive. It's about unlocking opportunities or bridging opportunities to the next. That's what it allows you to do. So yes, you pay more for it. It's short term, but it is a means to an end where the other way is a closed door.
Right.
Now what's
Buying the opportunity.
what's different with the hard money, the bridge loans, as far as let's talk about the same property for $500,000. Now, what would be an advantage to going for this bridge loan, hard money loan, as opposed to going a traditional route?
So I've always done comparisons between the two. And remember, there's a cover for every pot. I want you to realize that. So I'm not advocating hard money for every single deal across this country. That's not how it works. There are plenty of deals where traditional financing makes the most sense, okay? But when you want to begin to compare and contrast the differences between them, one of the biggest differences is tax returns, all right? We on the hard money side of the business do not require personal nor business tax returns. And why don't we? Because your personal income doesn't mean very much to me. because the loan nature is short. It's 12 months in term. So I care more about equity. I care more about experience and more of you having a pretty clean credit and background. Those are the factors that I care about when you're doing hard money. When you're going through bank financing, since it's a 30-year mortgage, they want to see the ability to pay it back over time. How do they do that? By vetting your personal or business income. So that's the first big difference between the two.
So that's big. That's telling me right off the bat that probably 99% of this country, 99% of the people can probably not afford to get into an investment property based on their income. Let's be honest, people.
Because the banks care about DTI
Right.
all the time.
So 99%, I'm throwing a big number out there, but most people just cannot ever get in this game at all because their income is not enough. That's from the perception of the big bank. But what you're saying is hard money, bridge loan, you care about the asset. That's a big part of it. And you don't care about the income pretty much at all. It's the
personal
asset,
income, no.
not the personal income. So it's the asset itself. Big difference.
It's a tremendous difference.
Big difference.
Now, staying on topic about asset specific. So a lot of these alternate terms are called asset-based lending, which is another word for bridge financing or hard money. And the reason why we call it that is just because it's exactly what he alluded to. We're not looking at your personal income nor corporate income taxes. But we are looking at is the equity in your home. That is how we view it. So once again, as we said, you got to buy it correctly. We're veering back to the same point. You have to buy it with some sort of equity in it. And then being able to unlock value. How do you unlock value in something? You got to repair it. You got to fix it. You got to renovate it.
Into it.
That's where we differ from a large bank. A traditional bank, if they saw the property not in pristine condition, they don't want to lend on it. You bring the property back to them when it's completely renovated and fixed and tenanted and very nice, then they'll lend on it. You bring it to them with repairs necessary, you bring it to them with the violations on there, they are not lending.
No money. You're
No
not
money.
getting the money.
So then what happens is most people realize, they go, well, then how do I actually finance these loans? And they get discouraged. There are means for it. That's why I said there's a cover for every pot. This particular pot handles distressed assets and anything that requires work to be put into it. That's its real niche.
So what could be the scenario now using hard money, using a bridge loan to buy this $500,000 distressed property that we've been using that as an example? So we talked about it kind of the traditional way, but tell us how we'd go about it doing a hard money product.
Sure. So the first thing would be obviously to get the property located. So we're going to fast forward to the point where you've located a property. Just some bit of information. REOs is a very good way. REOs is a real estate owned property, bank auctions. Okay, in your areas there you can definitely find them. Certain short sales is a very good way to find a property distressed and undervalued. Certain estate sales is a very good way to look into certain assets. Okay, so there's just a few pointers about where you may find these particular asset classes. So now you found the property, you've done your research to the best of your ability, and you realize that if I buy this property and if I do a certain amount of work to it, it'll be worth a lot more, right?
If you do $100,000.
Well, if you want to take
Roughly.
that
Let's
example,
take the same example.
of 500,000, sure. So if you're able to come up with the 20% down that it would take to purchase the property, and it required 100,000 of work. So let's take the 500. If you took 20% down, okay, you would be at $100,000. So now you put your $100,000 down. You have a base loan of $400,000. Property needs $100,000 to fix it. So now you're back up to borrowing $500,000. That property's worth, we can lend up to basically 65% of what the after repair value will be.
So in this case, this house could be worth, let's say 750. Let's just make it 800 to round it.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so 800 times 65%, whatever that is, it's going to be, what is that, 48, 480,000 plus 40, it's about 520,000, right?
So
Something like that.
Right. So you would be okay to take the initial loan plus the construction piece, okay? Because you would be within 65% of what it's going to be worth.
So you could take up to 520 total.
Yes.
You already took the 400, so technically you would be supplementing the 120.
That's it. Up to 100.
Up to 120.
Correct.
All right, so that sounds great because now you can fix this house and technically flip it and make a nice chunk of money.
Or
refinance.
correct.
Or refi it. So if you refi it now, you still have a house that's worth, could be 750, could be 800, something in that vein. So now you have the option to flip it, make a big chunk of change, or keep it and refi. Now, how do you refi it from that point?
Pretty simple. So I noticed that I'm going to touch on a really hot topic in a moment. The way to refinance it, it all plays out for you. The property's already fixed. So your asset class is already renovated. You are at your, let's call it your after repair value. Your value is now 800 or whatever we determined it was going to be. You only owe $500,000 on the mortgage. So you can see the equity cushion you have there. Now you're going to figure out, how am I going to rent it? Am I going to Airbnb it? And that's a very, very hot topic these days. And there are methods for that. Okay? Or am I going to turn around and just use traditional long-term rent? Long-term rents, as we qualify them as leases of a year or two or longer. Okay? It's a long-term rent. You make that decision based on your experience, so area, so on and so on. And at that point, once the property is tenanted, at that point you can turn around. And as long as, then you have two different options. Once you own the asset, now you have two different options and it's tenanted. You could go back to the bank and get a Fannie Mae or a traditional loan for that prevailing interest rate. Once again, tax returns are required. Or you can go through an alternative product or two where tax returns are not required, okay? You can keep the loan in your corporate entity, in your LLC, which though there are tax advantages to keeping properties in an LLC as opposed to your personal name. We won't discuss that much here in this class, but I will tell you to speak to an accountant. Also, if you're going to do business, do learn it's your team. You may want to find a really quality accountant to do business with. Ask him what's the advantage of ownership into an LLC or my personal name. You may pay a higher interest rate to get this loan, but you may be able to keep it in your LLC, and over the long term, that's going to grant you much different tax benefits. So remember, there's give to get. So as I was saying is, you could then at that point, you have multiple options open to you about how to exit this loan, pay off the original lien, and you're sitting with a property with, 25, 30% equity in the property that's rented and net positive. So now you just basically took out the great bulk of the cash that you put in. I don't want to say all of it because most times you won't get all of it, but you will get a great percentage of it. At that point, so now you see where buying the property at the best premiums you could, if you were able to pull all of your money out of it, think about this scenario for a minute. Fast forward now 6 months, you were able to pull all of your money out of the property. That means you own the property with zero money in it.
So wait, let's make sense of that.
Yep.
We bought a property worth $500. We had to put $100,000 down.
Right.
Okay. Then we borrowed some money to fix it.
Correct.
Another 100. So, but it wasn't our money.
Correct.
So we still had 100. So now we invested 100,000 of our own hard in our pockets. Right. The house is now worth 750, 800,000. Now, how are they actually getting to recover some of that original upfront 100,000?
Once they refinance, the reason why we like to lend the 65%, because most of the banks will give you up to 75 when you want to cash out. So what will happen is you can cash out on that property, you can get back your initial investment.
So when you cash out, you might get that 100 back, and this could be 3 months, 6 months, 8 months.
Yeah.
So essentially, you're squeezing. That might have been your whole life savings. Maybe you did a partnership with your friend, and you're going to get it back. So
less
this
than a
is
year.
crazy. So it's ultimately, you laid out money, you got it back.
Now, to circle back and answer the question of how expensive we were, what's your return on investment when you own a property that's that's renting positive, and you have no money into it. What's your return on investment there? It's infinity because you have no money into it. You put some sweat into it.
Sure.
But you own a property with none of your own money in it that's yielding rental income. So now, is my money expensive? When you look at that way, you'll realize that it's not.
So notice we didn't even talk about percentages really, because it's all relative. If you couldn't borrow the money to begin with, if you couldn't get money to fix it, you have no investment at all.
Starting at
So
zero.
what is that worth to you to get rent for the rest of your life? What is it worth to you to flip it? Make $100,000, even if you paid 30 grand in interest or 50 grand, it doesn't even matter, as long as you're positive.
As well.
So don't be scared of the interest rate. Just make sure all the numbers make sense.
It's a multi-billion-dollar industry for a reason. At least it's becoming that. And many of the investors that do this day in and day out pay the same rates that you pay. They make it work. And they make it work because if they buy it right and they're diligent and get things done, it makes sense. It pays out.
So ultimately, anyone can really get in this game. And what Ralph's saying and what I'm saying is, the more experience you get, right, the more intelligent you get about your buys, doing the comparables, do your research. If you're a smart buyer, you're going to make money. And smart investors, they grow their money faster and bigger because they have experience, not just only more money. They're buying right. They're buying smart.
As far as I'm concerned, there's a sequence to making money. I'm not only a banker, I actually do buy this stuff myself, okay? I own properties. So I've built new constructions. I've been on all sides of this industry. Here's what I could tell you. If you walk into a situation, you just want to make money, you're really missing the whole point. It goes knowledge, contacts, money. Money's the last thing you will make, okay? If you don't know what you're doing, there's no way you can make money doing it, okay? Just can't do it. If you have an idea what you're doing, now you start developing contacts. I think you mentioned that.
Networking.
Got networking. You have to make contacts. Who are you speaking to? Who are you working with? Once you have knowledge and you have contacts, the money comes.
Right. So let's not talk about making money. Let's talk about getting smart. Let's talk about getting the right connections.
Exactly.
And then the money always comes.
Always.
Smart networking equals money. Period.
The
And that
right
goes for
people
almost
around
any
Exactly.
kind of business. But we're talking about the most secure and most, this is the way people grow wealth in this country the most is real estate.
Yes.
That's why we're talking about it, people. And anyone can get in the game. You just got to get smart with it, get your network up, and like I said, money comes.
That's right.
Exactly.
Excellent. I don't know, is anything else going on in the country as a whole? Are there some crazy products out there that are just kind of mind-blowing or just something different that never existed before? Or is it everything pretty much been the same for the last 30, 40 years?
So ever since the advent of hard money's been definitely a tool that's now become much more popular. Excuse me, pick this up.
Are you comfortable?
Yeah, sorry about that. So hard money is definitely becoming a tool that's become a lot more popular in the last, let's just call it 5 years, in this last real estate boom we've had. There really is never a new product because every product is based on 3 factors. It's based on credit, it's based on income, and it's based on assets. It will always be based on that. From I don't care if the market's up, down, sideways, or spinning on a Ferris wheel. It will always be credit, income, assets. It's just where it's distributed, right? I will look at the property's debt yield, right? Where's the property produce? Because it has to produce something. So what's the equity position in it? There has to be some metric for us to look at. So like I know the Airbnb market is very popular. So I want to give you an example of how banks look at Airbnb. Easiest way is when you've owned a property and you've Airbnb it for more than 1 year, because now you have a record of accounts. It's like running your own business, and it really is. Some of the multiples are fantastic, and I recommend you, if you're interested in doing it, you should continue on that path. But that's a very interesting way of buying properties using Airbnb. You can even purchase properties with Airbnb in mind, okay? Because I know the notion out there is, well, how do we buy a property with Airbnb if we have this property has been proven it can be Airbnb, right? There are websites now in place for this is how popular this market's becoming, where you could actually purchase a property and based on the room count and the floor count, we could actually go online and figure out what that property in that area would yield, and we can use that income or that debt yield as your income that it would produce, and we can lend actually against that.
Wow. So
Wow.
now, so that's
really what we're looking to do,
Exactly.
like ASAP.
well, that's really saying that maybe a traditional rent per year would have been, let's say, for example, 30 grand, but with the Airbnb could be 75 grand.
Correct.
So now you're really assessing this property's value on this way bigger income.
Absolutely.
And that's a beautiful thing right there. All right. So yeah, we got to let the people know that you can't just look at things for the traditional way, because Airbnb has just opened the floodgates of just valuing the property as a business income. And that's how the lenders look at it, right?
Certain lenders are. Certain lenders, certain traditional lenders will not view it that way.
Right.
Okay? One of the things, and I'll say this again, it's all give to get. So if you're going to stay through traditional banking means, through Fannie Mae, for Freddie Mac, or any one of these let's just call them government-sponsored lenders, they're great at what they do, but they don't pivot very quickly, right? So what happens is, as markets shift and adjust, they don't. So who does? The lenders that have a little more keen eye onto where the market's moving, they're able to, as long as they, remember, they're still going to follow a very similar pattern. Credit, income, assets. But it's just the way they distribute the income or the way they view it, their optics change. And because data points change. That's where you're seeing really some aggressive plays in the market.
Now, will a lender consider a primary residence? Because that's going on today with Airbnb. People are renting out their first level that might have 1 or 2 bedrooms. Now, will a lender consider that as an income, even though it's a primary residence? No. So that's a big factor, people. So don't think you're going to get a traditional loan and be able to consider the income, or even go to a lender and consider the income in a primary. So multifamily is the way to go. And I tell everybody, even first-time buyers, I said, forget buying a primary residence. It's an expense. Buy a multifamily. Wait till you can afford it. Go partners with someone, because for this one reason right here is that you're not considered any business income on a primary residence, period.
I think I mentioned this before in the beginning of the presentation. I know one developer in mind. I won't mention his name. Okay, but he bought his first 3 properties while living in his parents' house.
I know
Now-
who it is.
You probably don't. But okay. We still can't mention any names, so
No,
please
I
don't.
know.
Okay. But the point is, people get laughed at these days when you live at home, your parents. They get laughed at, right? Because you didn't do the American thing. You didn't go out and spend $2,500 a month on rent or some house that you don't need. This person, client of mine, bought his first 3 properties while living in his parents' home. And he owns about 15 of them today. So I think he made the right choice, right?
Sacrifice.
Exactly.
Sacrifice. Don't buy a
Exactly.
liability. Don't buy an expense. Sit back, keep your cost of living low,
Yeah.
and invest.
And I believe that same investor to this day doesn't own his own home. He rents.
If it's the same person.
It's the same person. I know.
All right. So, point is that you got to sacrifice. You got to see the big picture. Don't get sucked into society. You got to buy a house to be an upstanding citizen because you want to have a family, you want to get married. That's all great stuff, but you're never going to make money. You're going to be stuck in that bubble of paying a mortgage and just living and working just to pay your mortgage. To build wealth, you have to sacrifice. You have to lower sometimes your standards, your cost of living, and save your money and just buy what you can buy, what you can afford. And that's what we're saying here. Sacrifice, pay your bills, get your credit right, save your money, and get your connections, get smart about investing, And again, the money always comes.
Money always
And
comes.
sacrificing, as in staying home longer than you'd like, because it's the golden opportunity to save.
It is, but you know what? Make sure you're paying your parents or your grandparents or wherever you're freeloading. Throw them a few bucks.
You
All
gotta
right,
contribute for sure.
got to contribute. Right,
And look,
but it's
that's-
not rent and it's not
that's
mortgage.
not for only. I mean, that's only one.
Scenario.
Yeah, only one scenario. There are plenty of people that are presently married and they have an apartment. They're paying rent. Home ownership has benefits. Even if it is your primary residence, it's better than paying rent. That I'm going to promise you.
Yes.
Okay. So now,
If it's worth it.
if it's worth it. Now, what I can tell you, this may fit you. You and your wife may make a decent salary together, and you both make good money, and you get paid on a W-2. Now, I know this class today was a little more about investors, but even when you buy your primary residence, if you're smart, it could be a form of investing. Okay, you could buy that primary residence if it's a multifamily. Let's say, as you said, once you own it, you pay rent. Wait a year or two. Vacate the other unit, so let somebody else rent it, and now you move on to another. That's the way it works. So I've seen a few different strategies work. There's no one strategy, okay?
This is true. The way I started is actually getting into a property, fixing it while I live there,
Right.
and then flipping it after a year or so,
Sure.
or renting it out and then getting another property.
That works.
So it's what you're willing to sacrifice, right?
Right.
All about
Are you
what
willing
you're
to?
put
Are you willing to move every year?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like moving ever.
I moved
I don't
like
like
30 times,
Well, there you go. Then you're.
and I'm 31.
Well, there you go.
I mean, think of
She's one. She's been moving.
Think of the circle. Every year you move one.
Honestly, yeah. I've lived like everywhere in Long Island.
I mean, so another good thing too about it is this strategy applies everywhere. I don't care where you are. Well, I'm speaking the United States, of course. Other countries, I don't lend there. But I am speaking about the United States. It applies everywhere. If you live in Jersey, there's phenomenal opportunities there. If you live in Florida, phenomenal opportunities there. Up and down, everywhere across the country are opportunities. But you have to be a little entrepreneurial. Make a plan, right? Learn about what you want to accomplish. Build your contacts, and then execute.
Absolutely.
Great
Absolutely.
information.
Great information. Ralph, we appreciate
Yes.
you coming
pleasure.
through, giving us the real deal on hard money. Bridge
Bridge
loans.
loans.
Bridge
Bridge
loan.
loan.
Bridge loans.
Or asset-based lending.
Or that. Whatever you want to call it.
Whatever you want to call it. It works.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My
Thank you so
pleasure.
much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for letting us mind your biz. Yeah.